there's work. If you want to work, there's work. There's cleaning jobs, courier jobs, there's virtual assistant jobs, there's support roles online. So for a lot of people that weren't in a state that's shut down, there was work around. So when I look at people now that have a blank in their CV, I go, okay, so what were you doing for that period? If the answer was sitting at home and playing Xbox, look, I probably, will maybe not look at hiring you.
Yeah. What is up, everyone? This is Ronnie, your host of the Ronnie Asani Show. My number one goal in this show is to bring you some of the most amazing and accomplished individuals in the business world to share with you some real, raw, and authentic business insights. We sit down and talk in a casual setting, nothing too serious, yet we unpack some of the most incredible ideas, concepts, and best practices. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and don't forget to share the love. Like, share, and subscribe. Gracias, amigos. Alrighty, what is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ronnie Asani Show. Joining me today is Tanya Abbey. Welcome, hello. Tanya. Quick introduction. Tanya is the co-founder of Black Wolf Consulting, which is a recruitment agency born out of desire to innovate and disrupt in the recruitment world.
That's great.
Tanya, you have around 13 years experience in the Australian recruitment industry. Co-creator of two HR-related platforms. The first is CoHealth Workplace Management and placeme.com.au. Tanya is also a mom of two and works side by side with the co-founder and her husband, Pete. Tanya, good to have you on the Ronnie Asani Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I guess over the last maybe 12 months, there's been a lot of changes in the world, in Australia, on a society level, on a health level, but also on a workforce level. And, you being involved in the recruitment and the workforce industry for the last 12, 13 years, I'm pretty sure, I guess it would be fair to assume that you've seen drastic changes in the dynamics of how things are working in terms of like what companies are trying to achieve when it comes to hiring people, what employees are or candidates are looking for. So I think it would be interesting to get a bit of, your perspective on what has changed, if anything has, over the last year or so.
I think, and it's a really open-ended question there.
I ask a lot of open-ended questions. Apologies in advance.
No, it's good. It's good. I can provide a very broad answer. Yeah. So I guess from starting 13 years ago, the mindset of hiring was that you get people in a job, they do the job, they go home, they do a good job. If not, get the next person in. So it's quite transactional. From an employee perspective, it was very much around, I want to get in, work, pay my rent, go out with friends, start a family, and then go home. Yeah. So we're looking at, in the last, I guess, 13 years, this big change to, and it was a needed change around, culture and having a good culture in the workplace. And, having, I think the ping pong tables, the Google mentality kind of went pretty quickly through businesses. People really want to feel like they're included and involved. So now with COVID, it's brought up a few things. So people feeling engaged at home, how to transition from work offices to home during the pandemic, and also now coming back in. From a recruitment perspective, even prior to COVID, people were wanting more from their employers. Yep. But it's a double-edged sword because the employers also want more from their employees. So it's really finding that blend and that match. So at Black Wolf, what we do is we do find the right people for clients, but it's very involved and it's finding that culture fit, but also the person that will be there for 5-10 years. Because now clients say to me, I'm lucky if I get someone for 18 months, which is really disappointing because, the cost of a bad hire is in the hundreds and thousands, but also the impact of that on your company. So in the last 12 months, we found that a lot of people obviously lost their jobs, but they kind of get into a mindset where if they're coming back into work, they want to come back for the right reasons. They want to come back so they can be with their family and also grow their career. But employers went through a really difficult period where they had to man the ship and then navigate through working from home. And it's not as simple as putting someone on a phone at home. You have to buy ergonomic chairs, you have to buy computers, you have to make sure that their workplace is set up. So I haven't seen anything like it. It's crazy, absolute crazy in terms of hiring staff at the moment. And it's just a mindset. Like Melbourne is very different to recruiting in Sydney and Brisbane. People have been at home for 9 months. Like they haven't been engaged at home because they're probably living by themselves and they're not seeing, you know, other staff or their colleagues.
Was mental health, besides the things like you mentioned, ergonomics, you know, desks and doing the standard things to make sure your employees are comfortable, have the things they need to perform the jobs, and even technology-wise. But what about things like mental health? People are not feeling great. Were there a lot of initiatives by companies to do something about that, to uplift the productivity? And
I think so going into it, I guess a little bit about CoHealth workforce management. So that was very much a reporting tool and still is based on how people are going at home. So we measure, it's very different to, I guess, performance management. It's more around mental health management. So we measure how someone's feeling at home throughout the day just by simple tasks like, you know, you dress for work. Have you eaten breakfast? Have you spoken to someone, you know, in your family to just make sure that you're kind of set up for the day and you feel supported? Have you spoken to your manager? Have you spoken with your colleagues? So we're finding that there was a trend there. So people that were at home, and we actually did it with our own team, people that were at home for probably longer than 6 weeks, it started to lag a little bit, especially people that live by themselves. We also found through some testing that some people were at risk being at home of domestic violence. So we noticed that there was a running theme that when people were at home with certain people who were at home, so the question was, is anyone at home with you today? We found that the times that the people were at home with their partners, their workload dropped or the quality dropped. So then it allowed us to have those discrete conversations. Interestingly, when we were promoting CoHealth, there was more interest, or there is more interest in America more so than here. I think here, because it's a smaller, you know, I guess in terms of our population, it is smaller, but people felt, you know, more hands-on with their staff. And it, you know, I think that we're looking at people now returning back into the actual offices. It's still needed because how are we measuring their mental health? So there were initiatives, but being really transparent, a lot of clients opted to go, let's just wait until we're back in the office and then we'll look at, you know, talking to HR. Whereas I felt like it needed to be a little bit more
proactively addressed.
Yep. So, you know, the gauge of that at the moment is like we kind of go through conversations with clients, and we're talking to clients at the moment around implementing this reporting tool into their platform. But unfortunately, it comes to cost. But I'm like, what is the cost of someone that hurts themselves? Like, we don't know when someone is at risk until something bad happens. Do you know, like
until it's too late.
It's too late. So, you know, there probably were a lot of initiatives within companies who had that ability to kind of reach out to their staff. Like our staff, we had them at home, I think for about just under 2 months, because predominantly in Queensland, and we did daily check-ins. And people needed, I guess from that, they needed that daily check-in, but it does tend to lag if you're not having that personal connection. It's that whole being around people, and not everyone wants to work from home. And we look at people that are in at-risk situations where perhaps they can only get support by being at work, where they can start to talk to someone, because they're not going to get it at home. So I would hope that there are more companies, because we spoke with really large companies that were just like, look, can't invest in the cost. And I was like, well, probably should, because people are your greatest, you know, thing that you should be looking after.
I feel like, not trying to be smart here, but I feel like a lot of companies took on the work from home with open arms, and they were like, oh, we're going to save on all these, you know, all that cost for, you know, renting out all these offices. And you heard about all these like large organizations saying our employees are going to work from home permanently. We'll never require them to come back. And whilst I thought that was okay, cool and interesting and open-minded and flexible and whatever you want to say, I also thought, you know, what's the downside? Because I personally, I kind of agree with what you said, or mostly agree, because I felt that sort of lack of productivity when I was working from home, back when I quit my last job, and when I was starting out my own business. Probably the first 18 months I was just working from home, and I was like, something about this is not productive, at least for me. And I understand for a lot of other people, it can be, or it is, and I'm not a psychologist, but something about working in the place where you rest, you go to bed, or all these things kind of just puts in a different mindset, where if you get up, you have to be at that place by that time, and you get ready, you commute, or you walk to the office, or you drive to the office, or whatever, and being in a setting that your mind always attributes that this is where you focus on getting things done, has at least for me a much more productive I guess angle or effect. So I don't know, I feel like companies should always look at what makes sense for them, depending on the company's size, depending on the culture. If you're a multinational company that exists all around the world, maybe that is something that, maybe you look at a hybrid model. Maybe if you are just a startup who's only 20 people, maybe going to the office 3-4 days a week, and then maybe a day or two off from home is something that can work. But I always find it interesting, what's more productive from
There's a few things there. So my role is really to sell a candidate to a client, but also to sell the client to a candidate. So, and this is such a crazy topic at the moment, this whole work from home. I think the general public assume that employers have the money to then set up computers at home, but it's not just computers, it's laptops and keyboards and ergonomic chairs, and as simple as setting up an extra CRM seat or a Microsoft Office. Like if you're looking at a startup, that's a lot of money. It's great for the employee, but the employer, they have to extend out their insurance, and they have to do walkthroughs and make sure that everything's set up. Like I'm waiting for work cover claims to come through because people at home have not been sitting correctly. The other thing too, everyone assumes that, people work in the cloud like Dropbox, and, not many companies always have that. So I spoke to someone, I was just calling in relation to, I think it was like a credit card that I needed replacing because it was expired. And he was like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm working from home. I keep going into another customer's file. Like all these files at home at someone's house, if you have a lawyer or something working at home and they have your personal files at home when they live with someone else, like I just think from a risk perspective, right? And then I've spoken to clients who started new jobs last year, but they never even met their staff. So then we go, at your 6-month probation, how are we defining success? If I'm not setting up your role and giving you everything that you need, but you want to work from home, at the 6-month probationary review, what conversation are we having? So it's just, and we think of all these school leavers that I think in Melbourne, they went to school for 3 weeks of the year. And then they're going to start a job, their career at home. That's
insane.
I think people think that it's this big brother mentality. It's not. But we have to remember that employers are paying your salary. I don't mind if people work from home. People in my team work from home. Recruitment, we can kind of recruit anywhere, but people come to work because they love the team. People are...
It's the second family almost.
Well, we're social animals. Like we want to be around people, and especially in a sales role, you need to have that vibe, of other people as well. And it's important for training. Like I couldn't train someone at home. And it's important to me for someone's career development to be able to set them up the right way. So if I'm recruiting for a client who's opting the work from home, will that candidate stay? Are they engaged? Like, will they do the right, not necessarily the right thing, but will they be able to align themselves with the vision, because they actually can't see the manager. They see them on Zoom. And it's just not personal, I don't feel.
You know how they say in communication 93 or 90% of the meaning is in body language, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you can still understand and pick up body language through Zoom and, you know, all the video technologies out there. But it's a whole different level when you, and we were just talking about this before we started, like it's a whole, that's one of the reasons I don't like to do, you know, Zoom podcast episodes. I like to be talking in front of the person, because you can pick up on people's energy. Like when it's across, you know, computers, there's, I don't know, I can't even put a number on it because I have no idea, but there's definitely a chunk of the meaning, or at least on a subconscious level, that just, and if that gets compounded day over day, week over week, month over month, you would argue that there's definitely inefficiencies there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's also the process of traveling to work. So you get, you know, out of bed, get ready, makeup, hair, whatever you're doing, you're driving to work. On the way to work, you might call your mum, or you might call your best friend, or you might, you know, have your people now are getting up, maybe brushing their hair, and they're walking a meter to their desk.
Yeah.
Like Pete and I started the business in a home office for 3 years, and I will never work from home.
Yeah.
It is so toxic being at home, and you're more inclined to go out and go to cafes because you don't want to be at home, and then you have this attachment to home where it's just work. And especially if there's stress there already, like it's not a light and fluffy thing. People need to be around people. And unfortunately for people in Melbourne and Sydney, you know, for longer lockdowns in other states and countries, they didn't have that choice. But I don't know, yes, we save money on traveling and things like that, but we're already disengaged. Everyone sits on Instagram and Facebook, and they don't, you know, receiving a phone call from someone is really weird, not in my realm, but, you know, we have a generation of people that are just used to texting and liking things and commenting and living that way. The pandemic came at a very bad time.
Couldn't have been a worse time.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to kind of go through a few things that I thought maybe would be interesting to talk about, and have you share your thoughts and I guess advice, if you will, to anyone who's listening or watching. So, and it's interesting because you have two perspectives. One is the hiring company or the organization, and then two, the candidate who's looking for. So I thought maybe we can address a lot of these points from both sides.
Of course. Cool.
So what should companies, whether startups, scale-ups, and I guess maybe that's one of the open-ended questions, but and I guess it depends on the size of the company, maybe the sector, depending, like maybe a few other factors, but generally speaking, in the environment that we're in with where we at in 2021, what should companies be looking for when they hire people?
I think they need to get the role right first. So when you engage with a recruiter typically, or if you're engaged with someone like myself, we really go through, like we visit you, we go through what you're looking for. I think companies need to first define what they want out of someone, and what the role will look like. And I think when they're hiring people, so I'm getting a lot of candidates come through at the moment that are saying that they're interviewing with other companies that don't have a position description or interview questions or anything organized.
Really?
Yeah, so be organized.
Well, is it just that? Sorry, Kai, is it just like additional budget? They don't know what to do with it. You just want to hire people.
A lot of companies, last year they kind of, anything that they could outsource. So, for example, if they were outsourcing HR or finance, or they had done previously, they tended to cut down their internal teams.
Right.
So you have companies that probably used to have a recruitment team internally, or HR or managers. They don't have that anymore. So now you have the MD recruiting, and he's like, it's not like it was 10 years ago where I can just shake someone's hand. I have to write up a contract and everything else.
Okay.
So companies need to get their idea, not their ideal, but maybe an idea of what they want. And I think when they're looking at people, and I probably won't be liked for saying this, but they should be asking people what they did during 6 months or 9 months if they had lost their job.
Oh, prior to them.
Or
Yeah.
no, well, during the interview. So,
Okay.
I've interviewed a few people lately, and they're like, look, I didn't work. I just kind of stayed on benefits because I could, and I've probably got to start looking now because, job seek is ending. And I used to work at Centrelink many, many years ago, so I was part of that that transition for the customer service centres to moving online. So I did see that, a bit of a mentality there. So employers should be looking at, hey, what did you do for the last 6 months, more so in Queensland when you weren't working, or Sydney. Melbourne, obviously, you're staying at home, but there's work. If you want to work, there's work. There's cleaning jobs, courier jobs, there's virtual assistant jobs, there's support roles online. So for a lot of people that weren't in a state that shut down, there was work around. So when I look at people now that have a blank in their CV, I go, okay, so what were you doing for that period? If the answer was sitting at home and playing Xbox, look, I probably, will maybe not look at hiring you.
Yeah.
If someone
surely. Well, it kind of speaks to the mindset.
100%. Yeah.
If you're willing to do the bare minimum.
Yes.
So if you're getting support, which was paying the bills, and so that led you to then not pursue anything and not use that time to do something productive, or like you said, do a virtual assistant job or whatever, it speaks to what life with you as an employee can look like, where you're just going to barely do what's required so that you get paid at the end of the month.
And that's right. It's support. It's income support payment. It's not income payment. So, and the TAFEs and the government threw a lot of money into study. Like a lot of TAFEs in Queensland and Sydney opened up free TAFE courses. So, I took the time to upskill, or I helped my friend who needed help with his business, or, actively, I tried to write on my resume and make sure that was all perfect. And so I think companies really need to be asking, what did you do, in the last 12 months? How did you change? What are you looking for now? You've really find out the person, because if a company that has a solid vision and culture, they need to get people on board that are, aligning with them. So companies should be looking for people that have that mindset, I think, and obviously experience and, in our trade qualified roles, they need to have trades, obviously trade certificates. But I think if you're in a small or large or medium business and you're interviewing people, get it right what you want, but also be curious around what they actually did, because it's their drivers. You'll find that people that did sit at home and probably weren't as proactive may not be as proactive in the role. So for me, small business owner, I need people that will commit, because I'll commit to them.
Yep.
So it's two-way. And we were talking about this earlier. A lot of people are kind of like, well, I want to work from home. If you're not offering that, I'm not interested. And yes, some people can do that, but there's other candidates coming through that are saying that's not on my wish list. So hire me. And I would take that person over someone that hasn't even started it at my business yet, and they're kind of already asking for, the privilege of working at home.
Yep. Might be a silly question, but what market are we in now? Is who has the upper hand? Is it from a supply and demand standpoint, is it companies looking for candidates and generally people in the workforce, and they can't find? So are potential candidates sitting there and saying, hey, I want this, I want that? Or is it the other way, where a lot of people are unemployed and there are a few positions and companies have the upper hand?
It depends on the industry. So a lot of industries really boomed throughout
Tech.
this period. Tech.
Retail.
Retail, 100%. Anything that was online, a little bit more that we don't think about. Anyone that usually employed people from overseas, so people that were kind of in that agricultural mining space and got people from overseas, there was a high demand for staff in that area. I think job seeker finishes this week. So I just read before I got on here, 150,000 jobs or 150,000 people are currently looking for work. And they're now in a market where everyone else is there. But I think to answer your question, it's hard to say depending on industry, like definitely tech. But it's very off-putting for hiring managers, you know, for candidates to say, well, you know, I'm rare, so you have to pay me. Like companies are getting pretty wise to that too.
Yeah.
I think now it's not really who has the upper hand, it's how the message is relayed. So, you know, if I'm talking to a client about a candidate and they say, you know, what did they do in the last year or what are they looking for? It's my job to present that candidate, not in the best shiny light, but just really authentically. But even companies, you know, so what did the company do? Oh, they let go 1,000 people. How do we craft that messaging? So I think it's probably more around, it's not maybe tech has the upper hand if you're, because those software devs, they're used to working at home. So there was no period of adjustment. They really transition quite easily.
Yep.
Lawyers are in high demand at the moment, like insolvency lawyers, which is not for a good reason, and accountants as well for the same risk and insolvency. So they're probably the hot jobs if we're talking about that at the moment. But if we look in you know, in mining, people that can't get people from overseas, you know, fitters and boiler makers and things like that, trades is in high demand. But I think too, a lot of employers are feeling really disillusioned with perhaps staff that let them down last year, so they're actually willing to wait for the right person as well. Whereas I think now, like a few years ago, they were just like, just find me people. A lot of my clients are willing to wait because they don't want to be let down again.
And probably also because they realize that they can still get the ship to sail with a couple of less roles until they find the right people. So there's more damage having the wrong person than not having anyone at all.
Yeah, 100%.
And when they say they were let down, was it because people started working from home and didn't really do a damn thing?
Yeah, 100%. Or a lot of people went and started their own businesses, which is crazy. Like they were like IT guys, you know, if I'm working at home, I might as well do my own business. And, you know, because I'm at home anyway and I can make more money and kind of contract myself out, which is, you know, it's great. The theory of it's great, but you have to pay for insurance and laptops and, you know, you have to have contracts prepared for clients. And, you know, anyone that started a business because it was a great idea has probably been through that process. You pay for an office and, you know, even you yourself, equipment and what happens if equipment breaks and insurance.
You need to get insurance on this equipment.
So, yeah.
Okay, so the whole idea of, you know, not being monitored or working at home or at a site or something where there's no supervision and then going into, you know, working on your own business or texting your girlfriend the whole day or whatever.
Yeah.
How do companies deal with that in the future, especially that we're talking about already? A lot of companies are saying we're not looking to bring anyone back, or even if we do, it's going to be a hybrid, 2 weeks, 3 days. I guess if I want to, in a perfect world, when people love what they do and they are inherently motivated and then also motivated by the company through the culture, through the pay, through everything else, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect world.
Yeah.
And we don't live in a perfect world. And there's always like, you know, so how do you deal with something like that, like software developer, rather than working 8 hours of the day on, you know, what he has or she has to do for the company they work for, they then take 2 or 3 hours and then code for their new app or whatever. I'm not saying anyone does that, guys.
This whole side hustle is such a popular thing at the moment, but it's very offensive to business owners. Yeah. And companies need to set the standard and what's the new normal. So for me, like, I absolutely love my team. They're all insane salespeople. They're awesome. And, you know, they'll be like, Tan, can I work from home or can I do this? I don't really, if they're doing great work and it's quality, Like,
Who cares?
yeah, like I know they honestly sit around probably for like an hour every day and shoot Nerf guns at each other. Like they're just hilarious. But when they're working, and I don't need. I'm not interested in monitoring. Maybe a few years ago, when I was a little bit earlier on in my leadership career, I probably felt like I needed to be overseeing everything. But we have systems and things like that to support them. So maybe the new normal is, hey, when you're working from home, make sure you get that report done in this time, or just check in with me and let me know where you're at. We employ adults. We're all adults, and that's why you got the role. But all we need are those people that kind of just stand out to make that difference. And that's what hiring managers are looking for, or employers are looking for. So the company has to set the standard. Don't kind of throw your hands up in the air and go, yeah, work from home because you're asking to. Go, yeah, well, yes, we can do that and we'll support you in that way, but we also need you to provide quality in the work that you do. Like that's perfectly fine for me for someone to work from home. And people actually do more so now than they ever did, because it's, it really doesn't bother me, but people come to work genuinely in our team for the team. They like being around each other. It's a choice. But we have a lot of mums, and me being myself a mum, sometimes their children are sick and they want to work from home. That's fine. Personally, I probably wouldn't want to work from home with my children. I love them, but I don't know why you would choose to do that too. And it's good for them to kind of be out learning as well. But yeah, I think companies need to set that expectation. So, any work from home or even a hybrid, this is, what you kind of need to do in your day at home. And this is what, have your meetings. So for us, if I have someone working from home, it's usually an admin day. Or they might be interviewing people on the phone and setting up those meetings for face-to-face when they're in the office. So, yes, we're all adults and we assume you're working at home, but just have a structured plan. Like, I can work anywhere, but I'm not like everyone else. Some people really want structure. So I think people just feel that it's a big brother thing, that they're not allowed to work from home. But there are a lot of things behind the scenes that people won't know about. Yes, people save on rent, but if people are in, leasing agreements for 3 years, they still have to pay that. So I think people have this perception, like you said before, that they're saving money, not having to pay the office, but they still have to pay. They're in a contract. So, it's hard to manage, but I think you just have to set an expectation if you're doing a work from home or hybrid model. Yeah. Really.
How do you, as a company, because, back in the day, I was interviewing for a company, for a role with a company, and I remember one of the other candidates said, in his pitch, he was like, to be the best, you got to work for the best. So he was like telling them, like, you're the best, and I want to be the best. I want to work for you.
Yeah.
And now, and I never forgot it. I never that line stuck with me forever. But now when I look at things, I'm like, to be the best, you got to hire the best.
Yeah.
Right? It's both ways almost, right? In order for companies to compete, grow, and become and hit the goals, they have to really get the best people. And it's not just about the fit. It's also about the skill set, and not just the technical skill set, but all the interpersonal skills, including leadership and all of that. So how do you, if I am company A, you're company B, and we found the right person, both of us, and we're basically competing, trying to get that person. And if it's not on money, like, what are the ways that, I guess, you guys at Black Wolf Consulting maybe share with your clients to say, hey, this is how you should position yourself, or this is how you should pitch it to the candidate. Like, this is how, because at the end of the day, you're still selling, right?
Yeah. 100%. I think when you're trying to get the best, it's hard. I'll use us as an example.
Yeah.
I say to everyone coming on board, it's going to take you 12 months to get it. Not to succeed, but to get it in our business, because we aren't like other recruiters. Our different style and approach takes 12 months. And I see the penny drop with the guys that come to their 1 year, and you just see them just getting their stride. I think we need to have realistic expectations, because what is the best? Is the best the person that goes out and sells 100 things and then comes back but then lacks quality? Is the best the person that lifts the team up? So I think companies need to really understand what success looks like to them. And they also need to know that, and I just spoke to a client about this morning, you may not always, so in our business I say you're either like Pete or you're like me. So we have different styles in the way that we work, but we are always parallel in terms of how we work. So we have the same outcome, it's just a different approach. So, but I'm not, Pete's inherently, he's a salesperson, 15 years, like he's awesome. He's the person that sells ice to an Eskimo a million times over.
Right, he should come to the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Next time, 100%. And then for me, I'm very much, face to face. I want to build that relationship, and I'm really inquisitive around, drivers and motivators. And I see it in people. You're either a Pete or a Tan. And I'm not going to say everyone needs to be like Pete or everyone needs to be like me, because it won't work. So we need to, if you want the best, position yourself as a competitive company, but then define what the best is. Because for me, I don't want my salespeople making 100 sales calls, because that's what typical recruiters do. I want my people to say, hey, I met with a client and he really spoke to me because he started in a backyard 20 years ago. This was a client I met this morning, in his mum's backyard, and now he's, got like a multi-million-dollar business. And it was cool because I'm going to be part of that journey. That's for me, that's success, having that conversation with that client. So when companies are positioning themselves, they need to be authentic. Don't have the shiny. Be really authentic. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I started an office, in the suburbs of Brisbane, because people want to be on that journey. I think they also need to allow people to grow into that role and have the right people that are training them. So I think competitiveness right now is around authenticity, and communication. So yeah, hopefully that answers.
Maximum transparency.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, hey, this is what we expect. This is where we're at.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between giving away too much,
I was
right?
just going to say, yeah.
Because, and not even for the sake of trying to look great, maybe for confidentiality purposes,
100%,
especially if you're a startup or something.
Yeah. I think too, like, we have, I've had people in the past before kind of work for us, and they're like, they want to know everything. When am I getting a new computer? When, like, what's happening? Like, when am I going to get more people on my team? And I'm like, well, that's my role. And you're probably not privy to all that, because there's a lot that goes behind the scenes too. So, yes, there is. It's not even a self-preservation. You're right. It's confidentiality.
Yeah. Like, let's say you're a startup and you're looking to hire a couple new recruits, and, there's seasoned, experienced people, and they want to protect the future. They want to know how likely is this startup going to make it, and not, 80% of businesses fail or more. Yeah. So they might ask questions like, what's the capital raising going to look like? Or, how much have you turned over the last 3-6 months? Yeah. Things that are confidential.
Which is
as well.
So don't ask those things in an interview.
I mean,
it'd be more like, what's your client base like? There's ways to kind of step around those or reframe those questions. Yep. So, what was your biggest achievement? Like, I encourage candidates to interview the interviewee. Yeah. But don't,
don't ask like what I just said.
Like,
I guess it makes sense that I don't work for anyone.
No, well, salespeople will ask those things. And because we're going, hey, so what commission did you get last month? Like, we're asking those, so they're probably like, well, I'm going to put it back on you. But there is that fine line too, like with candidates, because if someone's asking me that, I say, what are you going to say to my client? And that it's, so there's that people really want to be, like out there and, really direct, but it does backfire.
You could do a lot of research on your own. You'll find a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh, and I think too, like, I kind of say, and we were talking about this before, I am an opportunist, and no, guys, it's not a bad word.
Mm.
But the opportunity is always there. So I guess when you're, research the company that you're interviewing with, and your recruiter should prep you too if you're going to interview for one of their clients, but find out, what's their presence like in the market. And, what kind of clients are they dealing with, I even call people in the network and go, hey, have you heard of this company? What do they like to deal with if I'm about to recruit for them? Vet them.
Mm.
So because you best believe employers are looking at you on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have anything crazy on there, they're going to ask you about it in an interview.
100%. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not the HR personnel, it's the hiring manager. They want to know who they're going to be working with.
Well, you're putting it on the internet, so it's there. You can't be offended if someone's seen your Facebook profile.
Yeah. Unless you change the handle to make it very...
Yeah, make it private.
Make it private.
If you have some crazy stuff on your Facebook, make it private.
Yeah.
Or don't have one.
And definitely don't put it on LinkedIn. No, I don't think anyone does.
LinkedIn's not Facebook.
That's why I love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It brings the best out of us all.
Yeah. I think it got a bit dicey when everyone was putting up photos of their dog in Zoom calls last year. I was like, guys.
Yeah.
Let's roll some news through. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah.
Cool. Now, an interesting one for me is what, I guess, technical skills always evolve depending on the sector, but they always evolve. If you talk about tech and software development, there's always this programming language or this technology or whatever, much like any other industry. But on the soft skill level and in the world of interpersonal skills, there's anything from leadership to creativity to all these different things. And they also evolve, right? They also, in terms of what's more important to us as a company or as, generally speaking, as an economy or workforce. Maybe back in the day, I don't know, trying to come up with a communication skill off the top, listening skills maybe 5 years ago were at the top. Right? But now it's, I guess, maybe, who knows, empathy is the number one thing. I'm just coming up with examples, right?
Yeah.
So what are the most important things in your opinion in terms of interpersonal skills that one, companies should be looking for and candidates should be looking to work on?
Yeah, portray communication and honesty, even if it's bad. So
blunt.
we say to people, don't sit on a problem for 3 months and then come to Pete and I when it's too late and we can't fix it. Do you know what I mean? Have that, be really honest. In our business, we have a structure, a corporate structure where, you have the managers, team leaders, CEO, but that's purely for org structure. That's not how we work. I do the same work that everyone else does in the business. But I think, be honest, guys. Talking about giving too much information, don't give too much information in an interview. But, if you're a return to work mum and there's a gap in your CV, don't try and hide it.
Yep.
Just be I'm returning back to work. It's my first or second interview. I feel like I have a lot of skills. Prior to having children, I was an EA or whatever it may be. That's what I've done. Don't try and hide what you've done in terms of your previous work, but also communicate. If you feel uncomfortable with your manager, try and address it with them and say, I feel really uncomfortable with the way that we interact. And then, if that doesn't work, maybe go next rung up and then just say, if we can't get to this point, me and Mr. Manager, I will probably take it to the next level, but I do want to work with you. I think as well, people need to learn on perspective. So I had a leadership I guess, fast track course personally last year where, outwardly I was like, hey, I'm being a really good leader. I'm standing up for my team by, making sure I'm not letting anyone go. And, I'm going to really engage with clients and be out on the road all the time so I can get lots of business in and support my team. But a lot of people didn't see me in the office. So their perception was 10 is kind of too busy for us. Whereas my perception was, hey, I'm out there trying to support you guys by bringing work in and everything else. So we had, and, I'd come in to the office and I'd be on the phone and I'd probably be on the phone to a client. Then I'd just go straight to work, straight to my computer. So the perception that some people had was, she's so busy, I don't want to interrupt her. That's the worst thing someone can say to me because I feel terrible based on my experience last year. So I think it's as simple as asking. Like I had one of my only, and she's awesome, my team leader, she kind of came up to me and said, Tan, do you want to grab a coffee? I want to just check in with you. And I was completely floored and I'm totally embarrassing her by saying this, but no one kind of reached out to ask how I was going through that period. And then she, through her and Pete, they kind of gave me that feedback to say, hey, Tan, you're probably not as available. So she had that insight from Pete, very much around Tan, super busy. And then she was like, well, I'm just going to talk to her and kind of ask. I think we assume too much, that whole communication in body language. I might be reading or on the phone and I might be looking down and you might think that I'm not available. Attention. Yeah. But in reality, I've got a million things going through my head, thinking about my kids or thinking about the client or, my next meeting or whatever it may be. So I think to improve perspective, just ask. How are you going? Like what's happening with you? Just take that time because there's such a massive focus on supporting employees as we should. But what about all the managers and the business owners? Like that is one thing that I think people need to really work on, that and perception.
Yep.
Don't
assume that this is the case.
No.
Ask and find out.
Yeah, I think that it's social media has ruined us. Like we think that because she's on a private jet with, a French bulldog and a Louis Vuitton handbag that she's...
I love Frenchies.
Yeah, I know. They're cute. But, that she's like absolutely balling. You know what I mean?
Course.
Like that's not the perception. The perception is she might have been helping her friend out who's trying to like ramp up his charter business and she's just a really cool girl that borrowed her Frenchie for the photo and, just bought the Louis Vuitton and it's her first one ever. Like we are so judgmental, I think, and you just need to go into interviews and things like that and be probably less that way, but try and work on our perception and perspective of things.
It's funny you mentioned that point on social media and how people compare. I started looking at it over the last couple of years as, social media is exposing us to our own vulnerabilities and weaknesses.
That's such a great way of saying it.
Because we compare as humans. We compare.
Oh yeah.
Like most of the time, our understanding of happiness, our happiness equation is: are we doing better than others or not, or similar? If not better, are we doing similar? So it's always an equation based on relativity of where we are versus other people. And if other people are doing better, then I'm not happy, or I'm not, I'm not doing well. And that exists regardless of, whether social media is there or not. But it's been magnified and exposed and, put on steroids with social media. Yeah.
It's about moments of joy. I think it was Matthew McConaughey, that's his new book's awesome, but it's not about happiness anymore. It's moments of joy, finding those. So like many entrepreneurs, I have a daily set of habits that I do and gratitude, but it is that perspective too. Like I'm first generation Australian. My mum's from the Philippines and my dad is from England, and both genuinely came here with one suitcase.
Yeah.
So I was brought up with be really grateful for what you have. Like you've got to have gratitude. So if you're looking at the next person on your Instagram as you're scrolling and they have something that you don't have, like when you actually get to that point and you buy it, you walk out of the store and you're not that happy. But when you see, I don't know, your child walk for the first time, or the sunshine after being locked down for 9 months or whatever it may be.
I remember that moment.
It's those moments of joy. Let's not chase happiness. Let's chase joy. And I think Instagram, it's very transient. Like it's not real, guys. Like people, and as I said before, we have a generation that grew up on that. There's no foundation, you know.
I agree. Last but not least, definitely not least, Black Wolf Consulting. What do you guys focus on in the next 12 months? You don't have to give anything away if you don't want to.
No. So we recruit nationally, internationally prior to COVID, but we do a bit of stuff in New Zealand at the moment, more so Pete. I think growing, like my dream was to get into Sydney.
Yep.
And that's definitely, you know, why I'm here, seeing clients and stuff and growing the team down here. And then growing the Brisbane team. I've got an awesome team up there at the moment, and Gold Coast is head office. So all my crazy kids are there too. So I think really just probably getting our name out and doing good things for people and just helping people grow in their careers and also helping businesses grow the right way.
Yep.
I think the plan is just to be as organic as possible, but we really kind of dug in our heels last year and refused to leave or like, you know, kind of go down with the ship when so many other recruitment agencies really struggled, which is terrible. So as a result of that, we've gotten really busy, but I'm just mindful of just growing too fast. So I think just doing what we're doing and growing as a result, and hopefully making that impact with people. Yeah.
Anyone listening or watching, they do want to work with you guys. What's the best way to reach out to you?
So we're on LinkedIn. So you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn or just blackwolfgroup.com.au, and my amazing marketing guy just boosted our site and it looks awesome. So thank you, Carl. But that's how you reach us.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.